desire to eat it. So I've just lost the taste.
Yeah.
And I think the arguments are essentially correct. But the movement itself is middle class. It's moralistic, and I don't want to be part of that movement.
Okay. So, and I think you kind of addressed this already, but obviously your decision to stop eating meat in the first place was influenced by your connection to the punk scene. Would you?
It wouldn't have happened without the punk scene. Because I was a metalhead before, and what did we do is drink Coors and eat McDonald's. That's what we did. I wasn't exposed to these ideas until I got into punk. So absolutely, I owe my friends, Crass, MDC, Conflict, those bands, and my friends are what made me be vegetarian, without question.
Okay. So when you think of punk food, do you think of any specific recipes or ingredients?
Punk food?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, my notion of punk food would be whatever me and my friends are cooking, right? And so I don't know what else other than punk restaurants like I think of Pancho Villa's Tacos or Pancho Villa's restaurant in the Mission, and but to me, punk food is shit. I think of 20-something people with either in a squad or a collective house, and the kitchen isn't the cleanest, and the ingredients are, some of them been dumpstered, and some of them just aren't the best, but the equipment might not be so fancy. Frankly, sure is not so fancy, and frankly, again, it might not be as clean as you might want to, but people are trying to make a good meal out of that, and that meal is almost always going to be vegan. So when I think of punk food, I think of collectively cooked vegan food that is done as part of a social experience, not simply to feed yourself. And I like that.
I like that a lot too. And I think that that's definitely something that comes across throughout in the cookbook. I think the part where you're talking about cooking as like a means to reclaim part of your life that's being stripped away by all the other forces, and that's something that, I think is really hard to get across to people who just have never been involved, who've just never been around cooking, Yeah.
And, that's interesting about cooking. I hadn't really thought about it that way. Because I guess I would never consider myself a foodie or a person who knows anything. I should not have been a person we are punks who did a cookbook, not cooks who like punks, right? And so we clearly don't really know what we were doing, and everything was done I was a line cook in high school too, but that gave me no knowledge of cooking.
Yeah.
I knew how to clean, I knew how to make a fucking hamburger and all that kind of shit, but I knew what medium rare versus medium was and stuff, but I wasn't a cook at all. So we came at it through punk, and so for us the experience was, like you say, for people who know good food, for us the experience was just that social experience of being with people, and the satisfaction that comes with feeding friends, especially friends from out of town or something, a good meal. And it is, and I do think part of that essay, I do agree with that point, is that it is in a world like living in Spain, for example.
Yeah.
Is very different. Like you do not see a single person. I've not seen a single person walking around with a fucking Starbucks cup or a travel mug with coffee. No one does it, because everyone sits down and takes their coffee, or whatever. And so people don't eat in a walk. It's considered rude. People don't sit and eat in class. It's considered rude.
Yeah.
People eat. They sit or drink, and they love their beer, and they love their coffee, and they love to eat. But they do that, and that's what they do. And you don't see people on a fucking laptop in a cafe. They're there to be with friends, or to think, or usually they're here with their friends. And what a wonderful experience, and how American capitalism has destroyed that. We think we have to multitask everything, and it's tragic. And so we end up eating large quantities of gross fucking food on the run. And you can see that that's not the only way to eat when you're here in Europe. And I think that what we tried to do is model a different way to eat within the punk scene too.
Yeah, I mean, and I was talking with one of my friends the other day who's in a lot of bands. I mean, that's how we know each other. He used to stay at my house when him and his friends were going through town and like things like that. And he brought up just the fact of like, when you're on tour, it's just understood that where you stay, people are going to cook for you. Like, and it just happens, you know, and it's not planned. It's not, I mean, and I don't want to say that it's expected, like you would never be mad if somebody didn't have that meal for you, but it just is such a part of the experience and being in the culture that I think that a lot of people don't experience.
Yeah. Well, that's really wonderful to hear, because back in the 80s and 90s, that was not necessarily the case.
Yeah.
And it was and that a lot of the American bands loved to tour Europe, in part because, you know, you could get a free trip to Europe because they'd actually pay, whereas the U.S. the scene, you know, no one had any money.
Yeah.
But one of the things they always notice, and I experienced this myself when I was on tour with Pissed, is that every place you are fed. You are always fed, and you are always given at least 2 crates of beer, 2 cases of beer. And then you get breakfast the next day. Like, that is just standard at every place you play in Europe. And almost all the time the food is home cooked. Almost always. Whereas in the States, you know, that was more the exception than the rule back in the day. And that when bands came to our town and stayed with us, they were always happy, like, wow, you're feeding us, this is so nice. You know, most of the time we never get fed, and we just got to eat shit, you know, out, you know, fast food or something like that. So I'm really pleased to hear that the punk scene has changed and folks are feeding the bands. Yeah,
I mean, I hope that is definitely the rule. I mean, I know, you know, I mean, I guess I can't speak for everywhere, and that's always the thing with punk, is you can never, you know, there's no blanket statements.
Definitely not the case back in the late 80s, in the 80s and early 90s. It was the exception.
Yeah. And I mean, punk really, you can't really talk about Soy Not Oi and not talk about punk. Like, they're pretty entwined in your mind and in the process of writing it. Is that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I wouldn't try to, like I said, we are punks who cooked, not cooks.
Right.
We're not people who do food the way that you would consider a normal people who know food. You know, we didn't know food. We were young people who learned how to cook on our own and actually ate pretty well compared to what most 20-somethings. When I look at what my students eat, right, the shit they eat, we ate really well because we did it ourselves and we taught ourselves how to do it. I didn't know the difference between cumin and curry and coriander. I just threw them all in there, but tasted all right. You know?
Yeah. So would you say that punk still fits into your life today? Like, is it still, I mean, how does that, you know, does that factor in for you?
Yeah, I think so. You know, I'm 44 years old and I have 3 kids now, and my life is, and I can't go to, so as a result, I can't go to shows, and I'm old anyway compared to all the scene. I mean, it really is a scene for 20-somethings, and you don't realize that until you start pushing the outer boundaries of 20. You're like, oh shit, I'm older than everyone in this room.
Yeah. Even at 26 in Boston, it's a young, it is a young scene here, and it's, I'm feeling it, like.
Yeah, which is different in Europe. I think Europe, they have old men punk rockers and old women punk rockers is more normal, but in the States it's definitely young. But I think that, you know, my wife and I are old punk rockers, and we still have those old ethics, and we, I mean, in a couple ways, I think that this do-it-yourself, independent, and making music and living, these are kinds of things we try to teach our kids to be interested in, and to making, you know, to take music and art and culture seriously, and that they can do it themselves. And then I think when I look at what my college students do, and say living in Spain, teaching students, you know, they're interested in clubbing and going out and drinking and partying, and you know, most of it has to do with, you know, some kind of you know, most of it's related to sex, all which is totally cool. That's all good. I completely miss that aspect of young life. I never went to dance clubs or shit. I went to, all I did was go to punk gigs and bars. That's what I did, was punk, you know. But I also think what the punk scene that we created was truly unique. I don't see anything like it.